Yeah, beauty. All right, so you're listening to What's Your Voyage. I'm your host, Hamish McLaughlin-Leslie. We have co-host this evening, William Twist. We got Owen Haig behind the mic and on the video cameras. Thank you very much. And we have none other than South Australian State Parliament member for Adelaide, the one and only, the country girl.
That's it.
That has come to the big smoke.
G'day.
Lucy Hood.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
You're welcome. So, yeah, just before we were talking about Marcus Aurelius, so let's continue that because Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius is pretty cool.
It is.
So you were saying that quote about like death being around the corner and using that as a fuel to the fire to actually take your life on.
That's right. So I recently read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'm kind of interested in that kind of line of philosophy because it's really just talking about how rather than thinking, oh, well, what if I had 20 years to live or 30 years to live, like effectively you are dying right now. And don't look at that as a negative though. Just think, oh, okay, so this is really important that you just live in every moment and make the most of everything. So, there's this amazing quote that he says in Meditations, which is, we're basically just a soul carrying a corpse. And some people, again, might think that's negative, but I just think it's really, beautiful that that we should just make the most of every day and, live life to the full and not really sweat the small stuff if you can.
Big facts. So when did you actually start getting into Stoicism?
Yeah, so probably for a few years, but because I've been campaigning, I haven't probably had the time to really delve into it. But because I'm not technically, I'm not religious, but I still really do am interested in kind of virtues and philosophy and how you live your life. So now that the campaign has finished, I've got a little bit of time to read again, which is good. So, just getting kind of back into
You were before bed reader?
Interesting. Yeah, I am, but I fall asleep a lot quicker now. I do have 2 kids, so I get I used to be able to read for hours, but you'll probably get about half an hour out of it now. There's another Stoic philosopher, Epictetus. So that's the next on my list. His is called Discourses. His writings. So that's next on the reading list.
And you're like a paper book kind of person? You Kindle or you Audible?
I've tried the Kindle. I'd love to know, your listeners, what your experience has been. I went with the Kindle, really just loved it, smashed it. And then it kind of went flat one day, and I haven't recharged it, and I've gone and I've gone back to paper books.
You died on me. You can't.
Yeah, it's like I thought you'd live forever. No, and I've gone back to paper books again. I don't know.
Just like a moment of rage, like my paper book didn't die.
I think I prefer hard copy as well, just to get off the devices.
Yes,
that's a big thing. I can't continuously be on a device for 10, 12 hours a day.
That's right.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go Audible now where I can because I just drive heaps. So it's like being able to just listen is and be, minorly concentrating on something like driving. Like it's something that's pretty second nature by now. And I just find that it's a really good time to actually be able to ponder and think on things and consume content.
Yeah, I can't do audio books. I had laser on my eyes a few years ago and obviously couldn't read. So, tried the audio books. But I just really struggle with it. I just find my mind wandering off to something else. So I need to have the actual task of reading.
You might need a good person to read it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Matthew McConaughey's Green Light.
All right.
He read the whole thing. It was so good. I felt like at the end of reading that or listening to that book, I was just embodying his character as a human. It was great.
See, I would end up probably just taking on his accent in everyday life.
You just start doing a speech.
Why is Lucy suddenly talking like Matthew McConaughey?
The reporters give you a question all right.
Start talking about drinking bourbon.
Hey, it's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
Have you been to, what's it called? The one on next to Pancake Kitchen, Hans & Co.
Yes, Haynes and Co.
Oh, it's so good.
Marcus's place. It's amazing.
I
Yeah.
love it.
He's got a great setup there. They did World Gin Day down the laneway recently, a few months ago now.
Oh, yeah. I was there last year.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And they actually set up UV lights because a lot of the gins now are like UV gin.
What?
That glow under light.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they set it all up and we've got some amazing kind of gin distilleries around and great little bars and small bars, and it's all happening in Adelaide.
Damn straight we do.
Yeah.
So let's go back to a time before you were the woman you are today. How did you become to be the woman you are today?
Good question. So Narracourt, I was born in Narracourt, 1985. Parents were, so the Hoods are conservative farmers. So we have a farm called Mulberry Farm at Bullagoon, and it's named after a beautiful old mulberry tree that's still there to this day. My father is called Robin Hood. I'm not sure what my beautiful
for the rich and given to the poor. That's
good. Just had a very kind of, I guess you'd say, free range childhood growing up on Mulberry Farm.
So did you guys do mulberries or cattle and sheep? Or?
We were, so it was literally just the one mulberry tree. So we did cattle, merino stud for a while, and wool, and crop as well.
Yeah. Okay. What's crop?
So it was like wheat, canola, lucerne. Yeah. So it was a pretty fun childhood. My parents divorced when I was quite young, so kind of weekends were on the farm and weekdays were in the country town, so Narracourt. Bullagoon's about halfway between Narracourt and Penola. And there's a beautiful Mary Seymour Conservation kind of park there that we just called the Scrub. And so we would spend just weekends. We kind of named parts of the Scrub, so almost like a playground. Like we had Penelope Island and Bracken Forest and the clay pit, and it was just like your own little nature playground. It was just amazing.
Did you build any pretty cool cubby houses?
Yes, like the stick houses, and you just have to dodge snakes, and it was just a bit of a Wild West. I know, I was a bit of a Bear Grylls. I had my own kind of slug gun, and I'd go out. I started driving the ute at about 7. And one of my jobs with my brothers was just to clean the sheep troughs and just spend a lot of time just free range. It was great. My brothers would play tricks on me some days if they'd had enough of me hanging around. I had 2 older brothers at this point. They'd say that aliens had invaded the farm and that I needed to go and hide. So I'd spend all day in my father collects kind of scrap metal classic cars and all that kind of thing. So I'd spend all day just in a beat up semi or ute, just hiding from the aliens that had apparently invaded the farm. So I
feel that. I remember I think it was in year 3, my best friend and I, and we were just like getting into all the alien books. Yeah. And at lunch and recess, we would do our part against the aliens and just fight them on the spot. We'd just be fighting aliens. And I remember
so
at my dad's house back in the day, he used to have like these parties to do with the clipsal. And then I remember there was this little like short sword. It was like a little Roman sword. And I'd be standing in a mirror just fighting aliens.
Oh, I just love the imagination as a kid though. Like it all seemed very kind of exciting and magical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was just kind of like life on the farm. You kind of had to start working as soon as you could walk. So you helped with landmarking and shearing and drenching.
Yeah.
And then in town, Mum worked in aged care. So I spent a lot of time after school just at the local aged care home. And so I guess that's where I kind of got a love of listening to people's stories. Because the residents there, they just loved young kids, like talking to young kids, but really just wanted someone to kind of listen to them. They had the most incredible stories about their life. And so I guess that's kind of where I maybe formed the love of, having an interest in journalism, which is what I ended up going on to study. But and then life kind of had a different chapter. Mum remarried to my stepdad Patrick, had my little brother Liam, and so we were all just a very ordinary kind of, modern family of spending time with Mum and Patrick, and then being on the farm on weekends with Robin. I was doing a parliamentary tour today, and I was reflecting on how life changed a little bit. I was around 12 years old. I was sitting on the couch watching Friends. Friends used to be on.
Harish's favourite show.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I binged it a couple of months ago.
Yeah, because you're all so young. Like I lived the original, when it was cool free to air on 8 o'clock on a Monday night on SES 8, which was the only kind of channel we had in Naracoorte. And we were sitting there watching Friends, and there was a knock on the door, and it was the local doctor. And we all kind of went, that's a bit odd. Like, why would the doctor be coming to our house? Like, why wouldn't he just call on the phone? And it's because what he had to tell us wasn't something you could say over the phone. And that was that Patrick had a really rare form of cancer.
Like leukemia?
It was called mantle cell lymphoma. So it was a really rare form of cancer. It usually only affected older, senior people. And so there wasn't a lot of research into it. He was, at that point, 41.
Yeah.
I was 12. My little brother was only 2. My older brothers kind of started moving out of home and pursuing careers. And so that then became my very first experience of Adelaide. So my mum, little brother and I moved up to Adelaide with Patrick, and we moved into Hutt Street. The social worker at the Royal Adelaide Hospital organised us a apartment in Hutt Street. There's a little bottle green door there and I never forget it. And moved in there, and my mum and I would push my little brother in the stroller to the old Royal Adelaide Hospital every day, spend the day with Patrick while he had treatment, and then go back to the apartment in the evening. And so that was my very first experience of the city. And so being from a country town, I always just thought that you only found communities in a country town, but it was really lovely just moving into that main street and feeling welcomed to that community in what was a really challenging time. And
how old were you at this point?
About 12.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that happened on and off. We'd move up or I'd stay with friends. Sometimes Patrick would come up for treatment on his own for 2.5 years until we lost him. And so I was 15.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. And he was just awesome, like the best human being ever. He worked in the men's clothing store in the main street, and everyone just loved Patrick. And my little brother Liam, I still call him Bub. I still think of him as my baby, but he's so similar to his dad. So suddenly I kind of felt like we went into another chapter where, Mum was a single mum. My little brother was only 5, so, I kind of stepped up, had part-time jobs to help Mum. And it was around that time, that summer, so we kind of went from an everyday working class, kind of family, paying your bills, getting on with life, to suddenly having to, consider navigating like the welfare system. And there's that one moment where we were standing by the letterbox. I loved our letterbox because it was, Patrick had made it. It was like a little replica of our house that we lived in. And Mum would go out to the letterbox every day. She's looking, ruffling through the letters. And then one day I got this letter and we opened it, and Mum was so relieved, and I didn't kind of know why. And it was because it was the school card. And I was like, what's the school card? And it meant that the school card is, for those listeners who don't know, is just a form of support for low-income families to help them pay for the fees and services charge at a public school. So basically your school books and things, and pencils and pens, etc. And so from a very young age, I became very much aware of that kind of support for families. And I went to the school library to pick up my school books that year, and realised there was one line for the school card kids and one line for everyone else. So that was quite confronting, particularly when you're in a country town and everyone knows everyone. So there was that kind of sense of, I felt like there was this flashing kind of sign going, like, poor kid over here. But at the same time, it made me really understand like opportunity and the fact that I was getting that opportunity to have a great public education, regardless of how many parents I had or where I lived, my postcode or their income. And so I guess from a young age I did become very much aware about having safety nets and making sure that we give people, all kids, an opportunity at having a really good education. So I was always a studious kid, but really threw myself into school, and got my Year 12 results, and which meant that I was going to be the first in my family to go to uni, which is it was really exciting, but it meant leaving Narracourt.
Well done.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tatum, who your listeners would know from in a very similar situation with that. So it's just, bittersweet because it meant leaving the country town that I loved and my mum and my little brother and moving to the city, to the big smoke.
Yep.
So my housemates and I, we cried all the way from like Narracourt to Canalpin. So good 2 hours. And I told this funny story because we're such country kids, like moving up to Adelaide. And we moved into a little share house. And
wait, just quickly before you go into the share house, what hairstyle did you have while you were going there?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I had a mullet in Year 7 before, in between,
mullets being
in between
cool.
mullets coming back into fashion.
Mullet is now really cool.
It was
by the way.
just, I
don't think so.
I wish it was then. It was horrific. No, but at this point, I had really long hair, like kind of down to my waist, really, really long hair. And so so we move into this share house, and one night we look outside, we're like, what is that fantastic couch doing on the side of the road? We're like, what's going on here? And we're like, let's wait up till like midnight and just see if anyone notices if we take the couch. And so we dressed up. We waited till midnight. We took this amazing couch because we're like, what's it doing there on the side of the road? And it's only years later that I learnt the concept of hard rubbish and that it was absolutely okay to take the couch.
So for years you were like, I'm a thief.
I felt terrible. Like we dark clothing, like we're like, why would they just leave their couch outside on the street? Why would you do that?
We did that for years. Dad would always like, Will, go around the neighbourhood, see if you can find some good antiques.
Oh my goodness.
Dulwich was always so good for it.
Wow, I could have had a really good night's sleep like that, but instead, no, we waited up till midnight. So yeah, that concept of hard rubbish, like we were such country kids. And went to uni, I was studying journalism and international studies and attempting to learn French. I was terrible at French.
Yeah, I feel you. I got kicked out of class every French lesson.
Well, it was just a big step up. Like the first year was real beginner, and the second year she's like, cinq ans, and I was like, what? Like I couldn't even find the page that we were on, let alone anything else. So no, I thought it wasn't for me. But I am the type of person who kind of wants things done yesterday. And so 2 years into uni, I was like, okay, I want to be a journalist now. And I noticed that the advertiser were advertising for cadetships. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, not expecting anything, thinking, no, it'd be good to get through that process. I always joked I had a face for radio and a voice for print. So I thought print's the way I'm going to go. And so I applied for the cadetship and was just, it was just great that I was able to go through the various stages of the cadetship. They had a test, you had to write a story, a couple of interviews, and I gained one of these cadetships. So I was 20 years old and started and took leave from uni to start a career as a print journalist. So
gung ho, look at you.
It was really good fun. Funnily enough, I got the job of fashion editor, which is so strange considering I was this like country kid that
with a mullet.
Only recently had a mullet. And pretty much, thought socks and sandals was the height of fashion.
Oh, it is now.
I know. I feel like I was 20 years ahead of my time. And so I'd never forget, I went to Australian Fashion Week and Most of my clothing was from Target, and that's
Target,
as I was saying. And there's two main streets in Narracourt. There's Smith Street and Ormerod Street. I used to work in one of the clothing stores in Ormerod Street, and I had this bag from a shop in Ormerod Street, and this woman was like, "Oh my goodness, your bag is fabulous. Where's it from?" I said, "Ormerod Street." And she's like, "London, gorgeous." I'm like, okay.
Take that one.
And I was just such a fish out of water. But it was a great experience. Went to Malaysian Fashion Week. But really my passion.
Wait, what? You went to Malaysian Fashion Week?
Yeah.
For like working for the advertiser?
Yeah. And
that's so cool.
And I mean, goodness, again, like 20 years old, completely out of my depth. I'd travelled to New Zealand before, but hadn't travelled to an Asian country. And I remember arriving in Kuala Lumpur, getting off the plane, and this man going, "Oh, are you here for Fashion Week?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Lucy. I'm here for Fashion Week." "Oh, yes, of course." And they bundled me into a black Mercedes. I could have ended up anywhere. And they charged me my fee for the taxi.
Yeah,
and
I know what that's like. They go, "Oh, you here for this?" And it's like the major event there. And you're like, yeah.
And ended up with most of my money gone the next day. So.
Sounds about right. They probably charge like 10 times the amount.
Story
they
of a young blonde over in Malaysia.
That's right. It was just, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, so there was some real learning experiences there, but it was great fun. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world. And but really my passion kind of was in education. So when this opportunity came up to become the education reporter, I grabbed it because for me it just went back to that, that education is the great equaliser. Like it was such a, it was the biggest opportunity for me. Like I would not be sitting here today without my public education.
Fair. So what are the things that because I mean if you're really into education, right, you're not surely just thinking like it was all great. Like you surely had some criticisms of like, oh, this is how it could be better.
I think sometimes the biggest determinant of success for a student in the classroom is your teachers. And so, and I do think that like you can have, the fanciest grounds and classrooms and things, but if you've got a teacher that believes in you, there's something pretty incredible about that. And so, my little brother, Bub, who I call him, is a teacher. And he's just amazing. And I just think of the impact that he can have on kids just from being an incredible teacher is just amazing. And so I was a country public school, but the teachers there were just incredible.
Yeah, because they just really cared about it.
They really cared. Yep, they really cared about you and success. Making sure your success. I think in the end, our Year 12 cohort was about 50 kids. So classes weren't big.
For the whole class?
For the whole Year 12.
Okay.
For the whole Year 12.
Ah, so you probably had 12-person classes?
Yeah, maybe less.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
It's like a university.
Yeah, right. I went to private university to get that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the subjects sometimes weren't offered, so you had what was called open access subjects. My brother did a lot of those in Year 12. But really it was just brilliant teachers. And sure, I might not have had opportunities, like exchanges or trips overseas or anything like that, but I had great teachers, and I think that's the biggest difference. Yeah.
How do we make our teachers better?
Yeah, so I obviously became a public policy director for Peter Malinauskas during opposition. So this was working on the education policy with Dr. Susan Close, our Deputy Premier, was one of the first things we started working on in opposition. And so looking at teacher quality was really important. So we looked at policies around minimum ATAR scores for teaching, because we didn't want teaching to be a backup option for someone, say, you missed out on physiotherapy or you missed out on occupational therapy. Oh, I'll just go to teaching.
Which is the case often.
Yeah, like we want people to to study teaching because they want to be teachers. And that's not to say that just a high ATAR equals great teacher. But we do feel that there was a bit of work there. And then just diversity as well with teachers, women in STEM, more men teaching, Aboriginal teachers, having that diversity as well is really important. And then giving principals, the power to make sure they're choosing the very best teachers to fit their school communities.
So it's easier to let go of teachers?
Well, it's about making sure that, that they've got that, room to make the best hiring decisions for them.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. That's good, because I've always heard that that's an issue with, like, anything public sector related is, like, if someone sucks, it's, like, almost near impossible to get rid of them.
Yeah, and that's hard because, you don't – I think we've got incredible public servants at the same time. So I don't think it should be binary, kind of black and white. Like there's some middle ground there. It's like private sector as well. You want the very best people. You want a great culture. You want people to love coming to work as well. So you want teachers that, really love being in the classroom and love their students and want them to do an incredible job. So and I just love seeing my brother excel in his career, because I just think, he's chosen teaching because he wants to be a teacher and he wants to be in the classroom and he wants to be making a difference. So, hats off to all the teachers out there, because my goodness, like, I'm a parent of 2 kids and I can't imagine working with kids all day and then going home to kids as well. Like that's incredible. The patience and care and empathy and concentration levels that a teacher must have must be insane. Yeah, 100%. I take my hat off to them.
100%. What's another way that you guys are, like, trying to facilitate a higher level of teaching?
Well, the other actually comes at the other end, and that is around early education, so your first 1,000 days of life. And so what we do find, when we're listening to teachers, is the challenges in the classroom of kids who there may not have been any early intervention with learning difficulties, etc., or behavioural challenges. So the earlier that we can provide that support, the better. So we're kind of looking at 2 areas, and that's we're doing a Royal Commission into early childhood education to look at providing universal preschool for 3-year-olds. So currently you get it kindy from 4.
Yep.
So, for example, my little boy Ned, he's about to start kindy next year, but thinking about starting that earlier at 3. A lot of the other OECD countries do it, we don't. And having that early intervention would be just crucial. But it's also a economic policy as well, because it allows parents to go back to work earlier as well, who might not be able to afford childcare costs. Then there's that other level around supporting teachers when it comes to mental health of kids as well. So I'm not quite sure of the statistic. It might be that a mental health issue can emerge from like kind of 14 years old, and it shouldn't be up to teachers having to shoulder that responsibility of assisting those kids. So we've actually spent a huge amount of money in mental health for kids around creating a central pool of like social workers, psychologists, etc., that schools can then call on to support them in that space, because we want teachers to be teaching, not having to take on all of these other extra responsibilities.
Yeah, fair. Have you found that kids these days are a bit more like open to going to a psychologist and stuff, or a counsellor at school? Because I know that when I was at school, like, it was pretty few and far between that would actually ever go and take those resources.
If you saw someone go to the
you'd be like, something's wrong with you.
Well, you'd bully them.
Really?
Yeah.
We had an amazing, was it a chaplain? Like Trev at our school. He was incredible. Yep, Trev. Yep. He was amazing. Yeah. But you're right. It wasn't something that I ever accessed. When I went through a couple of challenges at school, no, I didn't. I can't say what young people are like these days, because my kids are 6 and 3. I don't usually spend a lot of time with kids around that 14 years old, but I'd like to think that we are having a much bigger conversation around mental health and making sure that
it's definitely grown in terms of talking about it. So you'd assume that would flow on, but you don't know, because kids are Kids are weird, you know.
The biggest damage was when some state governments decided to shut schools down. I don't think we ever got to that point here, but in terms of long periods of time, but that's where there's been unworkable damage. Like you can't get it back. The kind of a kid going out of school for 6 months, and then especially if they're in a turbulent family situation.
Yeah, that's right. And school's often the safest space.
Yeah, it's the sanctuary. I'm sure Tatum could speak to that as well. You know, been someone who she loves school.
Yeah,
you know, she'd rather be at school than at home. She said many times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't think you realise what impact that would have on a young person. Like it's often I think you get that stage in high school maybe where you start probably not drifting away from your parents, but your friends become your universe, and that's who you talk to and that's who you share with, and taking that kind of away would make would have had a huge impact. Like I think, in my early 20s, so I went off and moved to London, worked in a pub. Like I don't realise if someone had maybe and that was such an incredible experience that kind of formed how I then lived out the rest of my 20s. So if I hadn't had that experience, so that opportunity got taken away from a lot of people, either finishing school and wanting to look for a gap year, or kids finishing uni and maybe just wanting to go off on an adventure before, really delving into their career. So
I feel that's important. The adventure, like at the end of the day, like what is life about?
Yeah.
You know, is it about working, or is it about like enjoying this little 1 in like a trillion chance of actually being in existence?
Yeah, it was great. Like it was hard, but it was so much fun. Like we were getting paid like £5 an hour, just working behind a bar. It was so humbling. Like no one cared if you'd gone to uni or what public. Adelaide. Everyone asked where you go to school. No one cares in London where you went to school. They just come in. They're like, "Can I have a Foster's Top Love or a black sheep?"
A bit of warm beard goes down a treat. Bit of room temperature,
and it was so humbling because we were there 2008 during the global financial crisis in London, which Australia I don't know really felt as much of the effects, but over there it was huge. Like people were losing their jobs, and I was often the first person that people would meet after losing their job, because the local pub was really an extension of your living room. So people would lose their job, they'd be made redundant, they'd come in to the pub and I was the first person they spoke to. And so that was really humbling to listen to these people going through the toughest times of their life. And again, just really highlighted me the importance of just listening to someone's story.
So fair. What was one of the most tragic stories that you came across?
Yeah, to be honest, it was the hardest thing about the stories was when you realise perhaps that person didn't have anyone else to talk to, like loneliness.
Yeah, so like people that just no kids, no family, no friends. Yeah. They lost their job. They just had nothing.
Yeah, they had the pub and the Australian girl behind the pub and behind the bar, and I think that's why the UK actually ended up with being one of the first countries to actually create a ministry for loneliness. I'm just very interested in that space. Like I'm a Meals on Wheels volunteer because, just having someone, the power of having someone know your name, have a chat, is incredibly important. And so for me, it wasn't necessarily sometimes the specifics of the story. It was just knowing that perhaps you might be the only person that person that was able to speak to that day.
Yeah. I feel like it's become more prevalent in society that people are like absolutely alone. Because like back in the day, family, like the idea of how a family should stay together has crumbled a lot. Like a lot of the time we're one generational families where our friends are our closest family and people go, "Oh, I don't really like them. I'm going to go off and make my own family." That's like a very common thing in this modern time. But from what I've read, like that just wasn't a thing back in the day. It was like families had family friends, and that's just how you existed.
And you had a village.
Yeah, you just lived in these little villages. Or even if you were in a city, it was like, oh, you're only operating with the families that like your friends had become families with over generations. So you all cared about each other either way because that was just like the instilled nature of your social dynamic.
Yeah, and you'd marry often through those families as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Friends of friends.
Yeah, it would always happen, right? And then when you go on the high echelons, it was like, whether it be organised or whether it be little power plays and all that, for better or worse.
Targaryens.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout outs Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm halfway through the House of Dragons.
It's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
I haven't got into it yet.
Yeah, he's not there.
No,
not there yet.
I really liked The Last Kingdom. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So good. I loved it. Have you seen it? Oh, dude, you got to watch it. I'm telling you. Yeah, so do you agree with that's like a pretty sound analysis of how the differences between modern and more classical life?
Yeah, definitely. Because back then, if you wanted to talk to someone, you had to pick up the phone and dial a number and actually have a conversation. Now you send a text or an Instagram.
I mean, that's still all modern time, right? But yeah, definitely. It was even...
Yeah, and so in a way you can be surrounded by people but still be very lonely or have, 20,000 followers on Instagram but not maybe feel like you have a genuine connection. So, it's one of the reasons I was saying before we started, I have Parliament tours. I try and do them like once a month and I'll just pick people who might have had a significant birthday, might have moved into their community, turned 18 and rolled to vote for the first time. I do it not because, let's show you where I work. Like, I do it because I actually think if there was one connection that was made that day from someone who lives in the same community, or they might see each other next week down the street or at Coles or at the local supermarket, and they say good day or have a chat or, see each other at the coffee shop, then I feel like, my job's done, in a way, because a more connected community is a stronger community. It's a healthier community. So if I can in any way help connect people, just so, like I said, there's a real power in people knowing your name.
Lucy, I feel like your after politics job is like events. Just bringing people together.
You and Tatum can form a company together.
Yeah, right.
That's a great idea. I've got a job if this politics thing doesn't work out.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, but if we can just create those connections, create that sense of a country town in the middle of a capital city, then I'll be very, very happy.
Yeah.
That's why we do this. That's exactly why we do this.
Making friends. And then other people can see people making friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. But virtue signaling, in regards to what you were saying before about there's heaps of people that may even have heaps of followers and stuff like that, but they feel like they have no friends, and that extends to people that don't have followers and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of what kind of may get in the way of that, and please share your thoughts on this, is that a lot of people are showing whether it be what they think the norm should look like, and not actually sharing who they feel or who they see see themselves to be. It's like, oh no, this is just the way we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was a psychologist I was following on Instagram the other day, and they were like, rather than saying in your Instagram bio, I'm an empath or I'm a kind person, just be empathetic and be kind in real life, in your actions, rather than just having it saying that you are, actually do it. But as a aside, your story of self, when I talk to young people, when I go to schools and things like that, I actually talk about, I really want them to think about their story, the things that happened to them, their experiences, and talk about how that has influenced who they are and what they care about. It's all very easy for us to go, I care about health, I care about education, and I care about community. Boring. People are going to switch off.
Yeah.
But if I say, I care about health, because when we got told that there was nothing left we could do for Patrick and that we had to go home and say goodbye, there were 4 other patients in that room, and all that separated us from that moment and our grief was a thin hospital curtain. That's why I care about building the brand new Royal Adelaide Hospital where every patient had their own room. That's why I care about health.
Yeah.
The reason I care about education, because I've stood in a line where there was 1 line for the school car kids and 1 line for everyone else. And I knew that was my opportunity to have a crack at a great education and become the first in my family to go to uni. That's why I care about education. Why do I care about community? Because I grew up in a country town where it's in my DNA, and I moved to a main street in the middle of a capital city and still felt like I was part of a country town. That's why I care about community. So when don't just say, yeah, I care about X, Y, and Z. Like, actually delve into your life, delve into your past experiences and how they've shaped you, because that will say so much more about what you care about and what you're fighting for.
Yeah, I love that vivid sharing. Yeah. I've learnt through like personal development. They shared with me how to share like that, which is like, you know, bring people to the present moment, like you'd see in a book. When you read a book about something happening, you're like, you know, and there was a cat and it was running through the little garden there, and there was all trees and it was brushing around it, and it was just chasing this little mouse that's running and its tail's wiggling, and then it leaped and it got it in this ferocious manner and just bit it. You're there. You're hearing that. You're seeing that. I just came up with that.
Very excited.
I just came. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Or you could have said the cat chased a mouse.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Boring.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it's describing how you felt in that moment.
Yeah, it's just lively.
Like it's just storytelling. But it's, you know, I always say to someone when they're like, "Oh, I've got an interview," or like, I'm like, "You're the expert on you. No one knows you better than you. So just relax. Like, you've got all that experience, all those stories." Just no one knows you better than you. So just tell those stories, tell those experiences. How did you feel? What was the, what was the weather that day? What was the colour of the flowers? Like,
yes. Yeah. Will, you got something to say?
Well, following on from Hamish's point about, I suppose, identity. This is something I always wonder, because I would say, you know, clearly I'm on the right side of politics, and sometimes I get annoyed at right-wing activism. Goes too far, whatever. Is that the same with you? Been in the Labor Party, been in the left side of politics, you know, obviously potentially marginally on the left side of politics. Does left-wing stuff sometimes irritate you and frustrate you? Does left-wing activism frustrate you at all?
Not really. And I would probably say that it's because of my background. So like I was saying before, from a conservative liberal farming family, you know, I'm pretty sure my Nana, shout out to Nana, she turned 100 a couple of weeks ago. But I think she was a card-carrying liberal. So I've grown up in an environment where people had very much different political views. And so I saw that as a strength, because I'm of the view that you don't grow, or you can't have a decent argument if you're just stuck in an echo chamber. So I actually find people from both sides, far right, far left, really interesting, because it's important to actually listen to those arguments, you know, think about them, maybe sit on them, and then form your own view of where you sit in that spectrum. So no, it doesn't necessarily bother me. I am all for people who passionately believe in something and are able to intelligently articulate their view. And my brother ran as a Liberal candidate at the election. I ran as a Labor candidate, and we're best friends. Like, we're best mates. Like, and we have very different political views on a lot of things, but we can have an argument or a debate. Sometimes agree to disagree. Sometimes it'll get a bit robust.
So I feel like that in itself, that is a beautiful expression of like civil discourse. Yep. But I feel like that's leaving. If not, has left for so many people.
That's not on, and that's definitely not the mainstream on the left, respectively, of politics. Yep. Is that even for us, like, there's some shows that won't potentially have us on because we're of a certain politics, but we find we'll have anyone on because that's what our kind of philosophy is.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's your philosophy as well. But from our general goings about, that's not the norm.
Yeah. Look, it's a fine line, because some people will find some views unacceptable. Certain views.
What are your thoughts on freedom of speech then?
Well, I'm a journalist, so or former journalist, so but if a certain view is going to harm someone or hurt them,
what defines harm or hurt in your view?
Not offend.
No. I'm asking.
Oh, it's a fine line, isn't it? Again, it's that spectrum of you might not find that a certain view offensive, but other people do.
But is offensive the line?
No, because offensive can hurt. offensive. You know, you can offend someone, but that can really, really hurt. It depends on the topic, I guess. But like I'm for, you know, people expressing their views, but at the same time, if it moves into actually hurting people or damaging their confidence or their ability to feel confident about who they are and how they move through life, then.
But don't you think that somebody could,
okay.
like, that we are not also self-determining humans that can, like, respectfully not take on board that that's not us and that's someone else projecting themselves, and go, you know what, you're saying that, and I let you say what you ever want to say, but like, nah, man, this is me. I'm not that. Because I feel like unless we can go to those extremes of being able to communicate and potentially risk offending each other, you know, we're sitting here, we're clearly like having discussions about, you know, we haven't got that touchy subjects yet, but like touchy subjects that we could risk offending each other. And like, if I'm not a prick, then like, yeah, I'm going to like make sure I try to not offend you as much as possible so I can still get my point out, but then also be considerate. And I think that's nice and that's courteous and that's more manners. But do I think that in terms of the freedom of speech that I shouldn't be allowed to try and push that limit based on what I believe and what I feel to someone that may not believe or feel the same way? Because how am I supposed to learn the actual raw authentic of what you feel and believe that may also hurt my feelings?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to discrimination then. You can have different views, but as long as you're not discriminating, as long as you're not, you know, you're not being racist, you're not being sexist, not being ageist, and as long as you're not discriminating someone, I think it's okay to respectfully argue your view.
Yeah. See, for that, and also in regards to discrimination, correct me if I'm wrong, because you may know the laws better than I do, that discrimination is when you are preventing someone from actually having an opportunity based on discrimination. So, for example, like a job, for example, like travel, or even being able to say what they want to say because of that, you know? Whereas, like, if we're having a discussion of ideas and we're battling each other and I do say something that you see as sexist or vice versa, why should that not be allowed?
Well, it's just up to that person to call it out. Like the standard you walk past is the standard
what's allowed and what's not allowed, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's up to society to work that out. Like, and I think that's why we have these conversations and we have these debates, because back in the day you could say some pretty derogatory things about, you know, women or, you know, age or etc. But that is where, like, you see, you know, society change, and you have that through these, I guess, debates and conversations about, all right, well, where do we sit right now? What is, you know, what do we accept is acceptable? I would like to think that we're constantly improving. I would like to think that we all want to leave this place better than when we found it.
I hope so. I do. Yeah. I definitely do, and I hope that's the majority of people. Majority of people I've met, definitely. Some no, some, you know, a bit like the Joker, want to cause chaos for the sake of causing chaos.
Yeah.
But in regards to us moving in a positive trajectory, do you have a concern at all that we are moving towards something that is maybe like towards a less of a freedom for the everyman of people?
No. I guess I look at what you know, I've got two little ones, 3 and 6, and I love that, you know, they're growing up just, you know, really accepting of people's, you know, differences that make you unique. And I just think, yeah, watching they're so innocent at that age.
Definitely.
And that, you know, they just learn to care for each other and make friends with everyone and look out for each other. I think that can only be a good thing.
Oh, 100%. With everything you just said there, I'm 100% the same. Like, of course, that's the beauty of humans, right? But I feel like there's things happening, not just in Australia, but around the world that are moving us towards something that is more like of a far left as opposed to something that's like a caring left. For example, the truckers' convoy in Canada, when they froze bank accounts of people trying to do their protests because they didn't like what was going on in their country. And with crowdfunding, the government cancelled their crowdfunding and blocked it, and then distributed those funds to a charity. And then the people go, look, that's our money. We just wanted to help these people actually get what they needed so they continue their protests. Like, have you seen those kind of examples from your...
I probably haven't focused too much on that because I'm kind of often focused on the local issues in Adelaide. But I guess, but then you could argue... for example, the capital rights trial is starting now. And a lot of people at the time said, well, imagine if, that was a group of black people that was storming the Capitol and what the difference in response would have been. So it can work both ways with the far right as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great example, right? Because there are a bunch of individuals in that just did unlawful stuff. Going to the Capitol building and going in and having a protest there, legal, right? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
As far as I know, that's legal.
Oh, peaceful protest.
Going in and then trying to kidnap people and stuff.
I think the whole thing was a coup, to be honest. I think they let it happen purposely. They're looking at the security detail and stuff like that. They could have easily stopped it before they did. But that's such an atrocious thing that happened. And it's lucky that is not something that would even be in our conscious in Australia. I mean, there's been protests in Parliament
That being said, the stuff that happened in Melbourne, it was pretty wild. And during all the COVID lockdowns and stuff, police were shooting rubber bullets at humans and all that.
Yeah, that was really sad because a constituent of mine, her daughter was caught up in that. She just happened to be she must have gone to the shops at one point and she found an elderly lady cowering in a laneway, absolutely terrified, didn't know how they were going to get home. So, let's try and just peaceful protest people. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good if we could be peaceful.
That was something we talked about with Will last night because being in that kind of industry with unions and stuff, and he has to deal with the CNFU, the more aggressive union compared to other ones. That was what happened in Melbourne. But, at the end of the day context, you've locked people up for 6 months of their life, what doesn't really
as
matter.
he put it, cabin fever. Cabin fever was fierce.
That's never really happened, and that results in something that's never really happened in Australia for a long period of time, those kind of riots. Because they won't protest, they're riots, straight up. Yeah.
Oh, not all of it.
No, but
I saw a bunch of live streams. A lot of it wasn't.
Or the ones where they were walking across motorways and stuff like that, and then they got to a certain location and they started storming police and then police pushed back. That's a riot.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back to some local stuff. In terms of you working for education in your journalist career, what kind of things did you do there?
So really it was I wrote general news stories around education, but I also had an education kind of lift out. So I was really just trying to, tell the great stories that teachers and students and schools were doing. So, yeah, I loved it. Just going into the classrooms. It's the same with journalism, I think, in many ways is kind of similar to being an MP. You don't actually want to be stuck behind a desk. You want to be out there, meeting people, interviewing them, hearing their stories. Same with being an MP. I hate it if I'm just stuck behind my desk in the office. I just want to be out there, connecting with people and talking to people. So, that was excellent. I really loved it. But it got to the point where I wanted to, I was hearing what people were telling me, particularly challenges around education, teachers wanting, particularly young teachers, not just wanting contract, wanting long-time work and things like that, permanency. And so I was like, I want to take what people are telling me and do something with it, not just tell the story. And so I was like, well, how do you do that? You look at politics. And so the natural progression, journalism into media advising. So I did that for a number of years for several ministers, and then moved up to the treasurer And I loved it because I was like, well, no point coming up with a policy or a good idea if you don't know how it's funded. So I worked on about 4 or 5 budgets, state budgets, with Tom Cootes and Tonus, who was the treasurer at the time. And that was an incredible experience of just working out, where we take, where we best invest our money for the community.
What did you discover there?
So it's quite a long process. Yeah, this idea that, you can maybe ring up a minister and say, oh, I need X, Y, and Z for this. There's a real thorough process that goes into developing a budget. And so just the amount of work and effort that takes.
What was it like? Could you run me through it a bit?
Yeah, so the process and it might be different for different governments or for different ministers, but basically you have processes where your department talks to a minister about their priorities, things you'd like to achieve or things that absolutely have to be done. You then go through those and then go into a process with Treasury and the Treasurer and the Treasurer's office where you basically just go through line by line. And it's almost like a process of elimination really around looking at overarching of what your government's priorities are as well and where you want to where you want to focus. And so then my job when that full set of where money was going to go was finalised, I would read every single part of that and then have to communicate it to journalists. So my job was to take all of that information and effectively write media releases on all of those things. And, we wanted to be really transparent. You make sure that you talk about things that might not necessarily be good news, things that are great news. And then you go into what's called a budget lockup. And so you lock all the journalists in a room, and I've done lockups as journalists, both in Canberra and state. And they basically get presented this information and they've got a few hours in which to, consume it all, make sense of it, interview the Treasurer who's coming in, the Premier often come in as well, and put together how they're going to explain it to the general public. And so my job was just a stepping stone in that, in kind of assisting the journalists to make sense of, because I've had weeks to consume it, condense it, put it into layman's terms. They've got a few hours.
Why is it so short?
Well, I guess you can't lock them away for too long. We get in trouble.
Surely give them a day.
And now because of journalism, it's like hour by hour for updates for TV, but then Twitter's instant as well. So I was doing it around the time that tweets were like really powerful, and so we would not originally take journalists' phones and things like that.
So nobody could get like the exclusive,
the original lockdown
before others.
Yeah, like the original. That's right. I don't know what they do now because I haven't done the budgets for a couple of years, but maybe journalists are allowed their phone. It's just an honesty basis because obviously you're going to see if someone tweets something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a really fascinating experience. And so then moved from Treasury into public policy writing. So working, looking at what an issue was, and then how we write that and communicate that as a policy. So I wrote with my colleague at the time, Roanna, we wrote the 2018 election document and edited it and lost the election. And then I went on board as Pete Malinauskas as Director of Policy, and I was also in charge of question time, which is good fun. So my job to assist in writing up the questions that we would pepper the government of the time with, so Stephen Marshall.
Was it pretty dry doing that policy work?
No, I find it really, really interesting.
Is it long hours or like
no, not
what's the skill? Like how do you go about?
Well, that's the challenge with opposition.
You like 1 hour and then like, all right, give me a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
Or like how do you go about even doing such?
Well, because I had question time, so
work.
Parliament's pretty much every second week. So that second week I'd focus on kind of question time.
Yeah. Okay.
What the issues were of the week.
Oh, so you're doing the policy writing and the question time at the same time?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So every second week was probably more focused. And I was also part-time at that point in the early on of opposition, and because I had two children. So I had Audrey, and then I just had, during opposition, I had my second little baby, Ned. So I was juggling motherhood and work.
I love that name, Audrey.
Yeah, Audrey.
Nice
She's named
name.
after, so she's Audrey Scarlett. which is Audrey after Audrey Hepburn,
Yep.
and Scarlett after Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, because I just loved her personality. And to be honest, she's more of a Scarlett than an Audrey. She's a real firecracker. She's 6 going on 26. Like, I'll tell a funny story. My mum like keeps everything, and they had a locket, and it had a boyfriend from high school in it, a picture still. And she opened it. She said, "Who's this, Mum?" I said, "Oh, that's my ex-boyfriend." And she goes, "I've got an ex." I'm like, "Excuse me?"
Sassy. Oh.
She's like, "Yeah, like boy from kindy."
Watch out.
The boy from kindy.
She's like, "We don't see each other much anymore." I mean, she is just so funny. Like, she's amazing. I just love it. I love her confidence. She's my little firecracker. So I was going through kind of motherhood and work and things like that. So I kind of had got that balance down, and but really, when we were getting into the nitty gritty of policy, I decided to run for Adelaide. So that began a transition towards eventually campaigning full time. Yeah,
So you were pretty, I suppose I would like to say, instrumental to Labor policy in the last 5-6 years then. Is there anything you personally came up with that you've been able to start implementing or think of implementing in the first term?
Well, I would have to say I give all the credit to Dr. Susan Close. She is the absolute brains and powerhouse behind a lot of our policy development, and it also came from the various shadow ministers at the time. So I was really just that person to help pull it together and write it. So I'm certainly not going to claim credit for our policy document, but one of the ones that I did was quite passionate about that I was really happy to see come through was mid-year intake for reception and kindy as an example. So that was one area that I was certainly affected by it, with my Audrey having to wait till the whole next year in order to start school. And that can have a big impact on kids. Like, again, it's like, the earlier that we can, and it's just giving parents that choice. Some kids might be too young to start, others might have waited too long. So it's little things like that. I remember. What defines
that? Like, how do you figure that out?
Oh, it's tough. So basically, they had a 1st of May cutoff. So if your child hadn't turned 5.
Oh, so they have to be 5.
They had to be 5.
They're turning 5 in a couple of weeks. Let's put them in.
Yeah, they had to be 5 by May 1, and if they weren't, and so Audrey was May 21, so she missed out on starting school that year by 3 weeks.
Stitched.
And so again, it was apparent, knowing or not whether Audrey was born ready for school. I think she came out of the womb like ready to start school. So, but for every parent, it might be different. So it's just giving them that choice around making decisions for their own kids. So it's little things like that you go, for people who aren't engaged in politics, like they need to realise every element of their life is somehow being shaped or influenced by politics or a law or regulation.
Are you quoting Will
my goodness,
5 years ago?
I'm so sorry.
Politics matters, man.
Yeah, politics matters. It's
the funniest thing is I said that a week before you came on the radio show.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
There's a clip of me saying that.
Oh, that's people don't like it affects so much of your life from when you flick a switch or stop at a traffic light.
Let's talk about some policies then, because obviously, being the seat of Adelaide, there's a lot of things going on. You've got the live music grant, aquatic centre, women's and children's changing of the location. You've got Melbourne Street. You've got city homelessness.
Hart Street.
Hart Street, yeah.
Hart Street. Yeah.
Let's talk about the live music thing, because that's something that we're passionate about.
Yeah, I know. It's we've got a real push around that for live music because I think we'd all agree, like, one of the industries that was hardest hit during COVID, like if you're an artist, that just would have been so crushing.
Yeah. Like, I know heaps of people that they were like pretty well just at the cusp of doing events there full time after years of like doing venue management and stuff like that. And they were just about to like at the cusp, doing full time for their own gigs. And then it all happened and they couldn't do anything. And they were just livid.
I know, it would be so devastating. And like so actually during the election campaign, I held a fundraiser, and rather than keep the proceeds just for the campaign, I actually donated half to the UniSA art school, because my greatest fear, particularly from education, is that how many kids, we could have the next Mozart or Da Vinci or something, not becoming that because they're terrified that there's no future for them in art or music or.
Well, rest assured, our creative scene is pretty wild right now.
Yeah.
I have met some young cats from Adelaide that during COVID, they have blossomed because they haven't been able to think about going anywhere, and they've just honed in on their crafts, and not necessarily for the nightlife related things, but for whether it be fashion or art or music, they're just crushing it right now.
That's amazing.
We've got a really cool scene growing right now.
That's
cool.
So good. And I try and support live music wherever I can. I was at Lions Art Factory the other day for a concert. Last Friday night I was at Thebby Theatre. We've got this incredible group of 60s singers called the 64. Shout out to Ben Francis, he's a constituent of mine. Incredible talent. And they were just, what was beautiful was just how grateful they were to be performing to a packed crowd. It was just so beautiful, and we were all just you could just feel the love in the room for these 4 guys, because I can't imagine how tough that would have been. And so Andrea Michaels, our Minister for Arts, has got a huge push around supporting live music, whether it's giving off those small kind of vouchers or grants for people. The other day we visited a local venue in my community, Cafe Komodo, run by Andrew and Bronwyn, massive supporters of not just emerging artists or people wanting to give it a go, but just those people who are just consistently plugging away, doing gigs every week, to pay the bills, massive supporters. So we were able to give them a $5,000 grant to improve their venue and get better sound equipment. So just to improve that. Yeah, and it doesn't sound like much, but for all these, if you multiply that across all those little venues, it makes such a big difference. I'm a marriage celebrant as well. So I was affected by COVID and the events industry.
Events management.
When did you? Yeah, right. Yeah. You already set it up. When did you become a marriage celebrant along this journey?
I was, I said, I'm one of these people who wants something done yesterday, and it was mat leave, and I had Audrey, and I was like, well, I could walk you in a pram all day, but I need to have lots of things on the go, and so I was like, what's a really positive, lovely thing to be a part of? What do you like doing? And I'm like, I love going to weddings. They're just
Hamish on Saturday when he goes to his wedding.
It's like wedding crashers. I'm like, look, I could become a wedding crasher, or I could become a marriage celebrant.
We have to do that one day. I have to crash a wedding.
You could be sneaking at the back of the wedding, or you could be right up front.
I could be like Isla Fisher in Wedding Crashers,
Lucy Hood reporting from this wedding.
And so I just studied it because I was like, it had those same principles of journalism, kind of politics, of just meeting people, hearing their story, telling their story. It just happened to be a love story. And so I became a marriage celebrant. It was around the time one of my best friends, Nick, who I'd met as a journo at the Tizer, was planning to get married, and that was the first wedding I did. Nick's wedding to his wife Amanda in this amazing mansion called Labassa Mansion in Melbourne. And
whereabouts in Melbourne?
I'm not very good with Melbourne geography, being a country kid.
A suburb?
No.
Okay.
We went to the Stoke House in St Kilda, which maybe, I don't know if,
Yeah, well, St Kilda, that gives us...
That was lovely. That was, sense. It was around there, I think. And I've done, same-sex weddings, did one at the Wheat Chief. That was amazing. I've done a surprise wedding. That was an engagement party that turned into a wedding. Recently, I just went and did my little cousin's wedding, which was just so special. So
that's very cute.
That
again, how do you get time to do this? Surely the politics stuff's a full-time gig. And
that's right. That's why I've it's wound back now. So I've only technically done my cousin's wedding this year, and I don't get paid for it. So it's just I volunteer my time because I absolutely love it, and it's a nice light and shade to politics. Politics can be a bit rough and tumble at times. So to be part of something that's just all lovely and light is it's good for the soul.
How are the power games? Do you have many like little power games going on? Like that you don't have to say who, but like, you know, have you had interactions?
This person just did this.
Yeah, like,
that's right.
Do you have like little interactions? You're like, oh,
No,
there's
I'm
little power games we're
I'd
playing.
like to think I'm more. You get more bees with honey, so that's certainly my kind of outlook. No, we're really lucky. I'm a backbencher, so I don't. I've got this really unique opportunity. When you look at the Seat of Adelaide over the last 30 years, previous members have either had additional responsibilities of having a ministry, or they've been in opposition, so don't have that ability to roll out commitments. So this is the first time in over 30 years that I am a dedicated member just for Adelaide, no other additional responsibilities, and we're also in government. So that's a real opportunity.
It's really important.
Really important.
Can you explain to me why that's so important?
Because previously a member might have had additional responsibilities of a ministry as well. So they might have
like Ministry for Education,
Ministry for Education, Ministry for Agriculture, or Ministry for Child Protection, as the former member of Adelaide had, or you're in opposition, which means you don't have the power to implement policy and
you can't do anything except for scrutiny.
That's right. So for the first time in over 30 years, I am the member for Adelaide. No additional responsibility, member for Adelaide.
Yeah, you are.
And we're in government. And we're in government, so it means that we can roll out and deliver on our commitments.
It also means that Labor Party is a bit different, but Liberal Party means if you're not in the cabinet, it means you're not a slave to their decisions and you can go against it. One of your former colleagues and friends, during the time when the Clipsal they were considering the grandstand at the Clipsal, acquitted herself from cabinet, was Jane Mack Smith, because she didn't support it. She was able, and I think she was Lord Mayor was Lord Mayor previous
to that.
So that is an interesting thing for a local member that they can put their heart and soul into a seat, as opposed to, having to worry about broader issues going on.
Yeah, and we're a capital city seat, so you do have that challenge, because we have the CBD in our seat and we want to bring more people to the CBD with events and bring our city alive, and but I understand at the same time that comes with challenges for residents that live in the CBD. So it's that real fine balance. I've lived in the CBD. I bought our first home in Sturt Street in the CBD, just near Adelaide Central Market. Loved it. Audrey grew up in the Adelaide Central Market. And finding that balance of wanting to bring your capital city, your CBD alive, at the same time being respectful of residents who live there, and wanting to grow your residential population, particularly following the changes of COVID and how our work lives work, is a balance that you've really got to work on.
What do you reckon the population of the Adelaide CBD is and should be?
Oh, gosh, I actually don't know the exact numbers. I do know there's that kind of what's common is that there were more people living in the CBD like 100 years ago than there are now.
See, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Although you look at old videos of like how Rundle Mall used to operate and like...
Yeah, it had like escalators
but it was just mad busy.
Yeah, really busy.
Like now, my take on Rundle Mall, they've kind of stuffed it up a bit. My take is they've put in a bunch of things that don't have any kind of unique value proposition that you couldn't find in any suburb. For example, while it may be a great contract for the people that have the buildings there, and like, look, I have a lot of empathy for commercial real estate people, but Coles, Woolies, you can go anywhere and get that. You can go to any suburb and get that.
Don't like them.
But for like the main area, you need things that you can't go to any other place to. You need to be able to like go like, Rundle Mall. You just go to any other city, and it's like if they don't have all the high end fashion, like that's normally what you'd have in your big city, right? In the main shopping, you'd have all those brands that you can't get anywhere else. We need that. Obviously, we don't currently have the population of the pool to get that, except for maybe Tiffany and some concessions at like David Jones and Myer, which are pretty cool. Like there's a Gucci one, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
But like, I think if the government maybe assisted in this growth and just had heaps of boutiques go into that patch, then it would actually make that spot so much more unique that you can't get it anywhere else. Because why do people go to the Central Market? Has a unique value proposition. Yep. It's not some big retailers. It's a whole bunch of little ones that provide phenomenal produce, food, and all that are independent. And if you can't get the multinationals that, you know, have, you know, the luxury goods or, you know, the similar, or just those that have rules about not having too many stores in the one place, then it's like, we bastardize it, you know what I mean?
And like Adelaide, that is, or South Australia, that's like our unique, that's what's unique about us. It's like, you know, for example, our independent grocery stores. It's why, you know, deregulation of shop trading hours was such a hot button issue kind of between, and a huge difference in policy between the Liberals and Labor, because we have these, you know, really unique independent offerings of independent grocers. And when you look at your main streets, that's why I'm kind of investing in Melbourne Street and Hutt Street, because people have spent a lot more time in their local communities because of COVID, and they've kind of looked around and gone, what do we love about our local area? And, you know, you form that real strong relationship with the local coffee shop or the local restaurant because, you know, somehow suddenly you were connected, you're invested in this. Like, we want you guys to stay, we want to support you.
Oh, for sure. Shout out St. Gard.
Yeah, I know. St. Gard is incredible. Your Cafe. Oh, my goodness.
Yep. Good spots.
I love them both.
So they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. I love their fritters there. And, so you suddenly became really invested in your local community. And so, therefore, that's a challenge for the CBD. I think Rundle Street are doing some really amazing things. They're getting some great retailers there, which
Rundle
is great.
Street is banging.
Really fantastic.
Shout out to Theo Morris. He's kind of turned that one around.
Theo and Steve are doing a great job there. Just creating that unique identity of a street is really important. And so I think that's where, you know, we can really work with Hutt Street on that. I think it's a really beautiful street. Like I was saying, it's so welcoming and inclusive. Like, you've got the Hutt Street Centre there, so that's worked to those strengths. Like, when my family, like mum, 2 young kids, moved into that street over 20 years ago, like, we felt welcomed, and you know, that's a real strength of that street where everyone feels welcome. You know, dogs are welcome. It's got like this real like acceptance of like people with their dogs. So, you know, really dog friendly cafes and things.
Yeah, it's like the suburban part of the city.
Yeah, it's like, it's beautiful. So when a main street like that can create that unique identity, you know, people want to flock to it. And so that is the challenge of.
So what are you feeling? How are we going to make Hutt Street better? How are you going to do it?
Yeah, so I think another thing, you know, that Adelaide has as a strength is like our weather. Like, we're not Melbourne. It's not like Arctic conditions all the time.
We got like 26 days of rain on average.
Yeah, apart from this recently, like, not sure where spring's gone.
Good for the farmers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so, you know, that outdoor dining, you know, because that then does naturally create a sense of community and vibrancy when you see people out dining on footpaths and things like that. So, you know, I think that's something we can look at. But just artwork, you know, which supports at the same time local artists, live music, and the Adelaide City Council are doing a lot of that in that space, which is great. You know, illuminate.
There's a new mural next to the spot on the corner of Wakefield and Hutt, the cafe, not Bylong, diagonal across from that. On the back there's a nice mural there. I think it was, I don't know if it was council driven at all, but probably was.
Yeah, but it's great, like that. Yeah, public art, art sculptures. You know, that part of the city is so known for that, like with the Fringe. I think Illuminate really highlighted that. Yeah, we can actually be a cool city all year round, not just in Mad March.
I'm going to tell you, because I tell every politician that comes on that has anything to do with Adelaide.
Yeah.
When I was in Paris, we were there, and it was like 12 at night, and we're like, why is everything still open? And it's not just because it was Paris. They had a particular festival on called Sleepless Night.
Oh my goodness.
Where they allowed all their retailers to stay open for 24 hours, and then they had a bunch of public spaces, whether it be halls or actual like outdoor public spaces, that they had art installations and like festivals and stuff like that happening for this one night and one night only, and just completely activated the whole city. I personally think one end of Rundle to the other end of Hindley would be an awesome test run for it, and over decades be able to grow it out to the whole city.
Wow.
I was just about say that, Hamish.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that about the street parties in Melbourne Street.
Well, you should pitch that to the
I'm
tourism
pitching.
minister.
I'm pitching.
I was just going to say, but I really like reading my meditations by Marcus Aurelius and having a cup of tea, going to bed by 10 o'clock.
Well,
no,
Melbourne Street 30, 40 years ago used to have an all-night street party.
Did it?
Wow. Oh my goodness! See, again, being a country girl, I usually hung out in the pub. And so I came up to Adelaide. I'm like, what are nightclubs? Why? This is so late. Like, why aren't we at home in bed with a cup of tea, like watching The Bill on a Saturday night?
Oh, no.
I didn't say I was cool.
You did say you were 20 years ahead of fashion, though.
That's true.
Hamish, I want to get on to 2 other points.
Yeah, okay.
One's a win, one's somewhere in between. So the win I want to talk about is the Aquatic Centre.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a massive achievement to be able to get that done, considering it's been in stagnation for 10, 15 years. That roof doesn't look like it's going to hold up much longer.
No, it's as old as me. Yeah, so it got put on in 1985.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was we could just see that had literally become a political football from when, Crows wanting to take it over to then...
Good pun.
Yeah, boomtish, to then current council not really being able to agree on a way forward. So, and when you did look at the numbers, only 7% of the visitors to the current centre actually do come from Adelaide City Council area.
It's ridiculous.
Yet those ratepayers were going to have to effectively fund its rebuild, the ongoing capital costs, operational costs. So when you did actually look at the facility, it is a regional facility for that northern part of Metro Adelaide, and we wanted to do it right. Yeah, so I'm there every weekend with my kids, and there's not often places like that are really special where you go there and there is literally people from all walks of life, all stages of life, all ages, all different cultures, like all in the one place, from literally newborns, like little babies swimming, to seniors doing exercise classes, to people living with disability doing, therapy in the pool. It's just incredible. And I was a swimming instructor during my university days, so I'm really passionate about teaching kids to swim. And I can sing Humpty Dumpty and jump into a pool pretty well, by the way. it's on my resume. No. And so I'm very, very passionate about teaching kids to swim, and particularly so you see a lot of migrant families there as well, their kids learning to swim.
Yep.
And so it is just an incredible place. And so it deserves, every one of those people deserves to have a really amazing centre. Yeah.
Fair. Whereabouts is it exactly? I got the map here.
Yep.
Whereabouts?
Yep.
You
So
want to put it? Do you want to just hold down a little pin drop?
Yep.
Or show me.
There you go.
Okay, so it's on those ovals there.
This is the corner. It's the corner.
Yeah, so we went out to consultation, looking at 3 locations. So the northwest corner.
Yes. As in...
Sorry, northeast corner.
Okay.
I like. Northeast
next to
corner.
Prospect Road.
Yep.
And the tennis courts and all that.
Southeast corner or southwest corner.
I voted for the southeast.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, look, that was where I was initially looking because I wanted that connection to O'Connell Street, and but again, I wasn't my choice.
I think the people that voted for that have an incline of protecting the parklands.
Yeah, because you had that beautiful row of trees there.
Yeah,
it's a balance, and that's absolutely fair enough. Because you will have people who are purists who don't want a facility like that there, but it is a community facility. And it'll bring people to the parklands. Like I know when my kids go there for swimming afterwards, we run around in the grass or we play in the playground or you have a picnic or they climb trees. And that's what we want. We want our next generations to be engaging with the parklands and, forming that connection and attachment to them as well. So based on the feedback, overwhelmingly the southwest corner was chosen. But what we wanted to do was take particularly residents' feedback along Barton Terrace West, and we wanted to move it slightly further north, so directly, a buffer there, and make sure that was having the least amount of impact on trees and vegetation, and also actually look at utilising the existing car park that's there.
Yeah.
Because we know the traffic works off of Jeffcott. Like, we know that. But to look at the other options would have been then having to look at traffic impact studies for Prospect Road,
Yeah. There'd been a problem.
Barton Terrace West, and also the ring route, so Fitzroy Terrace. So it was about looking at that balance. I know, you know, people wanted us to consider whether or not we would build it on the existing site. But like I said, like, I'm there every Saturday.
And you lose the facility for 2.5 years.
You lose the facility. Where do those people go? Like, there's actually a demand for swimming pools, for recreational spaces. And, you know, I wouldn't have been able to go there every Saturday and look around. All those people, the swimming instructors, the lifeguards, the PTs as well. So there's jobs there. And say to people, you've got to go find somewhere else for a couple of years.
I think it should, if it's in good nick, it should make the government some money. Or at least be running at
break even,
because it was losing $800,000 a year.
Oh,
yeah,
and the design was so incredibly inefficient. I mean, it started as an outdoor pool and bit by bit became an aquatic centre.
So not many people know that. I didn't know that until you did your video on social media. I was like, what? They put a roof on an outdoor pool?
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, it started as an outdoor pool.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so...
No, but like structure...
So it wasn't built for purpose.
Doesn't sound that wild, but
wild,
that is interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it happened
they
that
put
way.
like
either.
a pergola.
It's a warehouse, essentially.
A pergola over a pool. So we're going to, we're obviously in the process now of beginning design work and making sure I want to consult with the community on that.
Going to have a gym?
Well, that'll be part of the consultation.
It will have a gym.
It has a gym now, so
yeah, but like a proper good gym.
I don't see why we wouldn't have a gym now.
My thoughts is that it should also
be great.
It should also have like a basketball court or something like that as well, like some kind of like skating court.
That tennis court in the northeast corner is like used all the time. It's packed.
Yeah, it
packed.
is.
And it's just wonderful. It's again an example of like, when you build that kind of community infrastructure, like, you can bring so many people to enjoy our open green spaces and our parklands and stay fit and healthy and connected. Like, the benefits of that are just amazing. Also,
it'd be a good, nod to the Liberals wanting to put a basketball stadium. You go and say to them, oh, well, we've provided some more courts in the aquatic centre. And basketball courts make money as well, because you can run social competitions and it brings in a huge amount of different people in. And there's no facilities in North Adelaide for basketball.
Oh, and that leads to one of my other commitments is actually bringing back the community hub at the Walkerville YMCA. So that's been closed now for almost 18 months. So we'll be returning
YMCAs?
There was a Walkerville YMCA there, part of the community
since the 50s.
Yeah, everyone has a connection to the YMCA.
Oh, yeah. I
it's been empty for 18 months. And so we're bringing it back as a community hub. So, on the argument about the basketball stadium, I mean, I was just of the view that right now, definitely post-COVID, like, that focus should be on health and actually getting people participating in sport.
I agree with you, even from an unbiased standpoint.
Watching it.
It was ridiculous spending considering what's happened. $500 million. Like, no. You've already got entertainment centres being repurposed and it's doing fine.
I think it looks good.
It's fine, yeah.
It's close to public transport.
It's not they don't need a new stadium. There needs to be more stadiums in general, like the ARC, the ARC over in Campbelltown. That's more the problem than there needs to be like a central stadium, because they've got the dome still if they want to use it. So, So nearer their issue. Hamish, do you want to bring up the next thing?
The hospital. Dun, dun, dun. The big ticket item of the evening. Yeah. Sorry to be so dramatic.
No, that's okay.
It was good fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was on radio again.
I feel like you're going to need to zoom in on your face as you say that.
True.
For the edit.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about before, a lot of my campaign was around health. And having been, having given birth at the Women's and Children's Hospital, the current one, pretty traumatic birth too. I ended up having to have a blood transfusion after having Audrey.
Oh no!
It was pretty crazy, and so just seeing how hard those staff work. It was I was a public patient, so I had to share a room, as well, and pretty aging facility. And now subsequently, because it is the way it is when you have kids. Going to the waiting room, spending hours there, and seeing seeing the ageing kind of facility, like we need to have, like our kids deserve to have a really world-class, first-class hospital. And the constraints of the site that had been decided by the former government just wasn't going to cut it. And we
what about the constraints of the site now in being, refitted and all that?
Yeah.
And like building up on it or building over the road as well and stuff like that. Like what's...
Well, yeah, this gives us that opportunity to deliver those more beds. So under the previous government, it would have been only one extra overnight paediatric bed. I mean, we're spending this money on a hospital and you would have moved in and effectively outgrown it on the very first night.
But can't you just build up on the current site?
No, because of the flight path.
What about building a bridge over the road and like building above the car parking area and stuff like that?
So do you mean the like
Newmarket
one? Hotel? Oh, sorry, you're saying
no,
the
I'm talking about the existing site.
I'm not sure on that one. I think well, really, it comes back to a policy argument around making sure that you've actually got the women's and kids co-located with the new Royal Adelaide Hospital. Previously, to take a step back around the history of it, it was going to be a combined hospital. They then looked at this idea, what they do interstate, of having a children's hospital and having a maternity hospital, so mums and babies, which happens in a lot of other states. I believe we used to have it with the Queen Victoria Hospital.
Yeah.
My nana was a midwife there. But people do know Adelaide as having the women's and kids. That's a real iconic building. The women's and kids hospital, and so it was obviously important to keep that together and not have to effectively duplicate those services with two different hospitals. And then it's really important that we've created that health and biomedical precinct there in the city, and so one of the challenges was around making sure it's kind of co-located, but having that option that a woman, if something did go wrong, for example, I had a traumatic birth, if something went really wrong, being able to have them transfer over to the RA if they need specialist care. So what we've done is in the new design created that four bed ICU unit if something does go wrong and they need immediate urgent care. But then you're still closely co-located near the Royal Adelaide. And so, like I said, our campaign, our kind of tagline was like for the future. Like we're not here to make the easy populist political decisions that guarantee you re-election in 3 years' time. Like we're here, like I said, to leave the state better than when we found it. And those decisions aren't just for 2 or 3 years' time. They're for the next generation. So therefore, I know that my little girl, if she has kids one day or my son has kids one day, I feel secure knowing that they're going to have a decent women's and children's hospital and not one that's going to be outgrown the minute we move in.
And that was the issue with the proposed site next to the riverbank?
Correct.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was a really constrained site because of the flight path. The flight path goes directly over, so you couldn't build up any higher. And looking at other sites, you had the Newmarket Hotel across the road, a lot of constraints around that site, potential around closures of Hindley Street around there. And also having to build a kind of a connecting bridge between the current hospital and there.
Or as William really likes, an underpass.
Tunnels.
He loves a tunnel.
You like a tunnel.
He loves a tunnel.
You speak about talk about the next generation and stuff.
Yeah.
That argument could also be turned the other way because I don't think anyone disagrees that the logical statements you've made about location being too big for that spot, finding a different location. But Susan Close came to the Heritage Forum a month before the election and she goes and says, we're not destroying any state heritage buildings. There's 10 state heritage buildings at the proposed site and they will be demolished. And there hasn't even been a consideration by Peter of maybe we could keep these buildings, maybe we could look at a different site, maybe we could do a combination of different things. And for us being heritage and historical fans, You know, and even a friend of yours and former Adelaide member, she's come out. Jane said she doesn't support the concept. So what do you think about how all this plays out?
Yeah. Oh, and that's really challenging. Like I said, I'm massively, really passionate about heritage as well. I mean, our family farm is named after the beautiful 100-year-old mulberry tree that stands on it. Like, I grew up in a community where, you value, particularly the natural heritage that you grow up in. So, that is really challenging. Like, and it's I think because we had focused, our entire campaign had been really heavily focused on health, and certainly my campaign, I stood out the front. I can't tell you for how many times, for hours, with a petition out the front of the Women's and Kids, collecting signatures, calling for more resources for doctors and nurses, calling for a better designed hospital that was actually going to fit all the facilities. So I'd have to say that had always been my absolute focus. The term wobble boarding, where you stand on the side of the road waving a sign, but, I stood there out the front of the Women's and Kids saying, they need our help, like the Women's and Kids needs our help. So it's something that I'm just so incredibly passionate about. I've been the mum sitting there in the waiting room with a sick child, watching the staff, struggling and seeing, the ageing hospital around them. So for me, absolutely, it's a really challenging decision. But I believe that our kids, our women, deserve a hospital that's going to last us the long term. And I think they've chosen that site.
Yeah.
Can't we figure something out with the current site though, instead of demolishing? Like building, because surely we can build up with the current site and reinforce and utilize the car park and build on top of that and stuff like that, and build over the street. And
well, again, there was that just question around making sure, with our health and biomedical precinct there, making sure that a Women's and Kids hospital is closely located to the new Royal Adelaide Hospital. So
what's close in that definition?
Also, they're effectively almost alongside each other in that space. So
but
remembering
in terms of trying to figure out a site, is it like you want it within 100 metres, you want it within a kilometre, you want it within 2 kilometres, 50 metres? Like,
it's a bit further down now than where the site was that the former Liberal government had chosen. But what they've done there, and that was going to be connected by a bridge. But because now it is a little bit further down, they've got that just as that. They've got that 4-bed ICU unit, so for urgent if something happens during birth. But then you've still got that. You're literally just down the road from the from the RA.
But so the Commode Street one's just too far.
Well, and because back in the day, the old RA used to be right directly underneath it. So you had the old RA right there, and you had the Women's and Kids just above it. Yeah. So they were effectively co-located very in a similar area. So
but then for how many years have we had the RA on North Terrace East? And then the
so
children there. Did we find that a lot of things were going wrong?
Oh, well, if
was
something was going wrong, you needed to get a woman into a ambulance ASAP.
Yeah, okay.
Which wouldn't rock up on time now.
Did they do studies and stuff to figure out?
I couldn't tell you that. Sorry, I didn't go into that level of detail.
Fair enough.
So the philosophical thing that I need to get my head around is, why is some state heritage better than other state heritage? These are state heritage buildings. I said to Hamish, obviously, family owns the fire station. Those barracks and the fire station are very similar because they're not aesthetic, beautiful buildings. Yeah. But they represent long time Adelaide history. Going back to, that barracks has been used for the cavalry since 1838.
Have you ever been there?
I have before, actually for a tourism event that we were doing consultation. It was like at the goal, and then we moved over into the barracks, and they were talking about how to use that area better in like SATC and stuff. But I just think that it doesn't set a good precedent. Yeah. That who's the decider of what buildings go, what buildings stay, and then because like the public should have maybe something to say with that, or there should be an authority that has something to say with that. Yeah. So I see it as like something that needs to be treated carefully, and I think for you as well in Adelaide that it's there's a lot of people that will get annoyed by and cost votes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I know, and you're obviously family. You come from a family with huge goals when it comes to heritage and heritage restoration, which is amazing. I personally am not like I asked you around whether you'd been to the barracks, because it's interesting. I'm not sure if you ever been to the.
No, I've been
barracks.
in the jail.
Yeah,
or the gal. However you say
The gal, yeah.
The gal.
yeah. People, or call it goal. Like I call it jail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's just different spelling. But I didn't know you could go to the barracks. I thought they're actively used.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're used by the police, so they're not actually, there's like a fence around them and things.
Yeah.
We'll often go to the, like we'll see the horses in the olive groves. But actually the horses are damaging the olive groves. So that's a whole other issue. But I can understand that people would be upset by that.
I mean, if you're going to lose it for a hospital, then that's not a bad reason. Like there's maybe some relevance there.
All I can say is that my campaign was very consistent on what I was passionate about, and making sure that we do have a women's and kids that is going to last us more than a night. Yeah, it's going to last us generations to come.
We're big on health, definitely.
With such a large project like that, just out of like curiosity for developments and constructions going through public sector, how do you make sure, because obviously the last hospital went way over budget and there was all these issues with it, like how do you make sure you don't have any of those kind of issues coming into the next project?
Well, that'll be a challenge obviously for the health minister.
Do you guys, just because I don't 100% understand the workings of government, do you, because that's part of your seat, yeah? Correct. How much do you work on the hospital as a project of yours being in the Seat of Adelaide?
I personally wouldn't, but I have that opportunity to, put forward various views or the views of the community through various committees. So it might come up via, Public Works Committee, or, there'll be a Women's and Children's Hospital Committee I think they've had in the past. So, but me as a person, I'm not going to be laying the concrete or being part of the design meetings or anything like that. But it's certainly something that I need to be across as something that's in my electorate.
In terms of here's where we're at with it.
Yeah.
Like status reports. More
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it is a facility for the entire state, not just a local facility. Whereas I might have might be more on the ground when it comes to returning the community hub at Walkerville, for example, because it is really localised infrastructure for those local residents and that local community.
Yeah, cool. All right, fair enough. All right, well, let's go to the next thing. What are we going to do with Melbourne Street? Because
what would you like to see? That's what I mean. My job is to go, what do you want to see?
Let me tell you. I would like to see some street activations. I would also like to see some more grant working, maybe with Renew Adelaide, to utilise, vacant commercial real estate that's there. I mean, one other thing is how do you incentivize people to make their businesses cooler for maybe even existing people, because it's not really fair to say, hey, your business isn't cool enough, let's kick you out and get someone cooler that knows how to do it. Yeah. Shout out to Penny Hospitality. You guys know what you're doing. You guys are popping up shops all around.
They got the two places down there.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying it.
Yep.
They're facts. They're dope.
Is that the one that's opened up in the old store? Heat,
and then there's next a few doors
Heat's
down.
Opened, and then Loxley is opened. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's Hugo Pedler. He was in my year at school.
Great.
And he also is Line Arts as well.
Oh, wow.
And the West Oak.
Love Line Arts. And, I mean, the Lion is amazing. And once you all have kids, you are going to want to go to Ollie Ashenden, the shoe store. It is incredible.
That's where I went growing up.
Yeah, it is like the best kids' shoe store ever.
Yeah, it is. And they have the little door that you go through for the kids, yeah.
I think it's events that revitalise Melbourne Street, because if it wasn't for the silly restrictions that were going on during New Year's Eve, the Lion actually had a New Year's Eve party, street party. It was actually good, considering that it was like a ticketed event and limited capacity. They did that next year with no restrictions. I could see easily 2,000 people going.
That being said, though, it didn't give access to the whole street to be a part of it as per se, even though it was Jason. It was very much a Jerningham party.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Melbourne Street party.
Right.
No.
And it was very favouring that corner, like the Lion. And obviously it's an institution of South Australia.
That's how you build
area,
isn't it?
That's how you build. You build line and then out.
But nonetheless, that's I think going further down.
Yeah.
But for street parties and stuff like that. But I even think just figuring out ways to incentivize people making their businesses better. Because that's going to help the street, right? If you have better businesses, because over time it's turned from being more of a hospitality to, especially on the west side of that street, being to very medical. And then you have the David Roche Museum, which is cool.
It's amazing.
Phenomenal location.
I love the David Roche Museum. Yeah. It is so cool. It's like having your own little freaking New York, right here in Melbourne Street.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic. And then, how you benefit from, we're going to have the Aboriginal Cultures Gallery.
I'm so
as well. So, making
that.
sure that we can be like, hey, Melbourne Street, we're over here. Come, get your culture, and come for, dinner or lunch. That's amazing.
We don't have much dinner.
Food, isn't it?
Yeah. There's not much dinner there.
No, there used to be. And 3 or 4 years ago, they all shut down.
Yeah. I know. I used to go there during uni to Mexican Montezuma's
Still
all the
good.
time.
Yeah, Zapata's is Zapata's one of the best restaurants in the state, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of restaurants on the other side, Penny Hospitality side. There was like a Chinese restaurant. There's
Lotus Chinese.
Fancy French restaurant. It's gone. Like they just kept losing businesses from that middle area, from where the store. How that's not operating it anymore.
No, that's Loxley now.
Yeah. That was a massive when they lost that corner, and that really hurt the street in general.
Absolutely.
Because the corners make things look like they're busy. Like when you go to Hindley Street, when you're going down, you're going over the bridge and you look over to the Rosemont, you look around, oh, it's pretty busy tonight, I better go out. But if that corner's not busy, you ain't going out.
And again, hospitality.
Outdoor dining, that's where we're talking about, because it creates that sense of vibrancy that people are there, and we've got the perfect weather for it. That's absolutely true. And then creating that kind of village heart, but then how do you you ensure that flow on benefit? So Prospect Road, because I'm based in Prospect, has really come up over the years. So it's about getting those lessons and connecting in. So I actually got their economic development team at the time to come and speak to Hutt Street traders. This is when I was the candidate. Beautiful. Just to share stories around what worked. Because people are saying in Hutt Street, oh, we don't have an ATM. Well, neither does Prospect. There is not a single ATM. Like, there's one at the OTR. So you can't just blame the fact that you don't have an ATM for why you don't have people in your street. It's about identity and soul and creating those cafes that people want to go to. I'm
sorry, but we don't have an ATM. Our street's so good at work.
And I'm not saying, that was specific to Hutt Street, but, some people might say...
would say, man, there's no ATM in this town. Like,
No,
I mean, that's a big deal, though.
It's certainly been an issue for Hutt Street that we used to have lots of banks, and it's where people did stop as a thoroughfare, to go to Bank SA or et cetera,
we're not doing banking like that anymore.
But no. So, it's really looking at, how do you create that identity and think about your... it's no different to this podcast. It's no different to... It's marketing, isn't it? It's like, who is your audience?
Well, it's a bit spaced as well.
Yep.
It's a bit spaced. There used to be, a lot of, really lively places all next to each other.
But there's got some amazing things happening. Like, I don't know if you've gone to the Olivia Hotel. That is gorgeous. Incredible little kind of quirky small bar. Amazing vibe.
Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's fantastic. Havelock's doing a big renovation.
Yep, saw that.
We've got, Coffee Philosophy, which is incredible. Bella Booster
is
absolutely going off all the time.
That's true.
All the time. So no, we've got some amazing... Canty's institution, incredible. So no, we've got some amazing businesses in Hutt Street. It's just, how do you bring it all together and, just create that buzz
so it's
and
a
that
collaboration between the businesses rather than feeling like they're competing against each other. It's like, hey, I got an Italian restaurant. Oh, you got a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I feel like Chinese, sometimes I feel like Italian.
Well, the big part, you got Bylong as well. Shout out Bylong store.
So good.
Work for Bylong.
Yeah, I started with them when they started on their marketing, on their social media.
I love Bylong.
So shout outs to Bylong.
Again, House of Chow, another Hutt Street institution.
Yeah. Yep. Well, didn't they just get sold?
Oh, did it?
I think so.
All right. I love it.
There's a bunch of good breakfast places.
Oh, Bartorino's really good.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of what I've heard of why people aren't huge on that street. There's two things. There is a fair bit of commercial vacancy. Mm-hmm. I did a study there in, 2018 in the last council election with the Lord Mayor campaign for Mark Hamilton, and just walked down the street and actually just counted all the shops, because that was part of his thing that he wanted to do, was create a task force to alleviate, or I guess incentivize people to move back into the city with whether it be council rates and all sorts of things. So the commercial vacancy, so it is a bit spread out in terms of like it being full of tenants, and then also the homelessness was like seen to be a pretty big issue for people.
Yeah. People complaining about it all the time.
It's like safety, lighting as well was a thing.
Whereas the Hutt Street Centre's had a redevelopment, but like I said, I really do think that is can be its strength, that this is a really welcoming, inclusive place.
Oh yeah.
But there is definitely a safety issue with a fair bit of the homeless.
Yeah,
that is definitely not something to brush over, I don't think.
Yeah.
Because I've been around working in car parking, some homeless that do get rather aggressive, and you do have to call the police because you'll be in danger.
Yeah. And look, and a busy city is a safe city. If you have, if you've got
plenty of people
plenty of people around, lots happening, there's lighting, the shops are open, that's a safer street.
Yeah, it's true, because what I heard was Glenside. When Glenside shut down, like a lot of the people that were there that were taken off the streets were then let out, which sounds...
Not let out.
It sounds a bit ridiculous when you say it. But did that happen? Because it sounds a bit how you're going, that they get let out.
The X ward was shut down, which is the very high level crazy stuff. But Glenside still operates.
We've got a urgent mental health facility now in the city, O'Brien Street from memory. But on the topic of homelessness, we've got our Human Services Minister, Nat Cook. She's absolute powerhouse in this area. She is just like relentless in advocating in this space. And obviously during the campaign that we announced our commitment to return funding that had been cut by the previous government, to Catherine House, to Vinnie's, to Hutt Street Centre, but also working on it does come down, like there's a lot of reasons. People don't choose to be homeless. Like there's a lot of reasons that relate to it around obviously mental health, lack of affordable housing, losing connections, losing connections from community. It's why I always come back to like a more connected community is a strong community, because if someone knows your name, if someone's checking in, that can make a huge difference. And so Nat and I a couple of weeks ago, there's some amazing stuff that's happening in this space. We went and visited a place in the city called Terra Firma. It's run by Lutheran Care, focused on people 45 and over, includes couples. You're allowed to bring your pet. A lot of people have pets. Like they'll feed their pet, their dog or their cat before they'll feed themselves. And that gets them back on their feet. Usually they're in this, so it's kind of like a hostel kind of style accommodation, gets them back on their feet. They work, people assist with them to get them either into the private rental market or into public housing. Average stay of anywhere around, I think it was 2 to 3 months, and gets them back on their feet. Like there's some amazing stuff happening. But also massive investment in public housing, like having access to that. So we're spending 180 million in that space.
I was very supportive of the policy changes. Mark Hamilton was supportive of the Hutt Street being there, because there was talks about getting rid of it by some people, which was way extreme.
Yeah. I know it's really like during COVID in particular, like the Pilgrim Centre in Flinders Street, you often would ask, so why is there the homelessness, in the city? It can be things like, obviously they've got access to, to public transport and services, but often it's more lighting, so you can feel safer. During cold weather, people would sleep next to air conditioning units because they got warmth, So when you hear those realities, it's like I just cannot imagine, having to be in that situation where you do have to sleep rough. It would be really hard.
So fair, especially since the modern world is so good. The modern first world. Yeah. Because, you think about it like this, just a little anecdote. Kings back in the day, or kings and queens of like the medieval times, they wouldn't have had the comfortable living that someone has in an apartment today. Nowhere near the same.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have climate control. Where they would have been freezing in there. Like, yeah, they had fires, but like, they're huge castles. They still would have been cold.
Yeah.
And today, just in a little apartment, you got it all.
Yeah. I know, like, I didn't have, like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, I didn't have air conditioning till I moved up to Adelaide. Like, you didn't have air conditioning in your country home or something like that. Like,
I've
never had air conditioning.
There you go.
At my parents' house.
Yeah.
So
You had a nice gas fire though.
Yeah,
Not
like
my
certainly,
room.
like the world that we live in now of all these creature comforts, and that is a sad reality that we all expect to have the big screen TV or the ducted air conditioning, zone controlled, to each room, and then there are people literally sleeping next to an air conditioner for warmth because they're homeless. Like,
Facts.
it's
Harsh realities.
yeah. It's and I'm so glad that we have an amazing advocate in Nat Cook that's fighting for that.
Have you
space.
travelled and seen some of that, like around the world? Have you been to some pretty impoverished places yet?
Well, look, it's in London. I've done a lot of Vietnam.
Yeah.
And travelled through Vietnam. Morocco.
Oh, you've been to Morocco?
Yeah.
Nice.
I did a trek.
So cool.
I did a trek into the Sahara.
Yeah.
On a camel.
That's
Oh.
cool. Seen that movie Treks?
What? No, I haven't.
I think it's called Treks, and it's about this lady. She was from another country, and she came and like tamed a camel, and then travelled. I think it was from the centre of Australia all the way to the west coast.
Yeah, wow.
And it was like a true story.
I was not very prepared. I assumed that the desert nomads who were taking us into the desert would provide water, so I took along my bottle of red wine on my camel, only to realise that, water was quite scarce. And we travelled in with these nomads and stayed in one of their tents, and they made us a tagine, like the traditional Moroccan kind of stew.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And then we went Stangerine walking and looking up at the stars, and it was incredible. But
We've seen so many stars out there.
it was incredible. Take water when you go into the Sahara would be my hot tip.
Or any desert or warm place for that
Any
matter.
desert, actually, anywhere, every
National
day.
park included.
Hydrate regularly. Yeah.
New policy. Hydrate.
Yeah, hydrate.
Yeah. Back to basics. Get water in you. 2 litres a day, 8 cups to reference.
Particularly if you're going to one of the hottest places in the world. Yeah.
Facts. Yeah. I mean, imagine going to Central Australia. I feel like living out there would be wild.
Yeah.
I want to go to that Mount Woodruff.
Oh, yeah.
It's the tallest mountain in South Australia.
Right.
And I think it's in the northwestern
Lands.
Oh, wow.
corner of South
You have
Australia.
to get permission to go there because it's in Aboriginal native lands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah, well,
I'm learning Ghana language, actually, talking about our
words
our
you know?
country. I've got my Yakantalia, Tamari, my dearest brother. He's a Ghana elder, so he's teaching me. So right now, whenever I go to a community event, I do the acknowledgement of country in Ghana.
Can you do it for us?
Yeah, so I would have loved. I should have done it at the start actually. Namani, Mani Napudni, Nainari, Lucy, Goodnato Hood, Ghana Mirana Nadlu, Ghaniata Tampinthi, Natalia, and so I've said, thank you for being here. My name is Lucy Hood, and I'm the third born in my family. So in Ghana, you always identify if you're the first, second, third, fourth born. And that, I acknowledge that we meet today on the lands of the Ghana people, and that this is Ghana land. So, it's wonderful. My Yakantalia Tamari is so generous with his time, and we met through citizenship ceremonies at Prospect, and I just think it's one way, like when you think of all the languages, all the Aboriginal languages, and only a few now are actually spoken. I love that my little girl sings the Ghana song through school, and this is the oldest living culture on the planet. Like, it's pretty amazing to be able to share their words.
They're actually so embracing of the white fella trying to learn their culture as well. Like, I never seen a culture that was more embracing of when you actually go and ask questions about how things were.
Like
So nice to me.
Uncle Tamari, you know, he talks about at every citizenship ceremony. He gets a new citizen up on the stage, and he says, "I don't walk behind, I don't walk in front. Like we walk alongside each other." And so that's always been his philosophy around teaching Ghana. For him, he just, you know, that's so proud to be able to hear Ghana spoken. And so, yeah, whenever there is that opportunity, if someone's already done the acknowledgement of country before you, there's nothing wrong with you getting up and doing it again. Like, you know, this is Ghana land. Like we should embrace it and be proud of it. I'd love to see more, you know, Ghana art. Like Uncle Tamari does a lot of Ghana art that's kind of where you kind of draw the family unit and then connect it to the other families. And, yeah, it's just all about culture and, respecting the land. And, I'm just so, very, very privileged and humbled that I get to learn Ghana language through my Yakantalia Tamari.
So fair. I'm really keen for the Arts and Cultural Centre. Was it called Centre or Museum?
Yeah, it's Aboriginal Culture Centre, but it does have a name. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly, so
good.
I have to get it back to you.
I'm really keen, and I hope this happens in the curation of it, that we get to see like who are the heroes of the history of the Indigenous of this country.
Yeah,
you know, like what kind of like conflicts were there throughout history, and how did they go? Because like you get that back in like European history and all that, and it's like they're wild stories.
Well, that's why,
and you get to see the political, arguments, like the story of Troy, and like, whoa, oh my God, and like why it happened. It was over a woman being stolen because she was seduced and all this stuff, and like it's just these awesome like stories that are huge, and also just like the real thinkings, whether it be Marcus Aurelius and like exactly what he was thinking.
It was the indigenous
feeling
person for that.
On his daily life and stuff like that. Like what was his mentality? What was his view on politics? What was his view on just like existence of being?
And that's all right. And that's, the state-based delivery, statement like voice, treaty, truth, like that truth telling is such an important part of reconciliation as well, like hearing about what happened, like being really open and honest about, the things that did happen back then. But their elders and the key people that formed part of their culture and their history. There's we need to really embrace that, celebrate it, but also feel it, and that's the importance about truth telling. Sometimes the history isn't easy to hear, but it's important that we listen.
Oh, for sure. You got to know the realities. Truth is important. Truth is kind of like all that matters. What's the point of living in a world where truth does not exist? You're living in a fantasy that is just by someone's making instead of what happened.
Here's a policy suggestion for education is that this stuff is just not taught. We had to inquire ourselves. We had to be intuitive. We had to find the right people. We had to do a walk to figure out some of the things that we know now. And I talked to the average person. They love to be opinionated on their activism, but they really don't know much, and they have no connection with people. And that needs to be considerably changed, because if it doesn't get changed, we're never going to have really good reconciliation. We're never going to close the gap if people don't understand what the gap is in the first place.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah.
Big facts. Yeah, doing the walk was phenomenal. Do you know about the walk?
What work did you do?
So George and I, and Will was like the head of logistics.
Walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, your walk,
Adelaide
your huge
to Mount
walk.
Gambier.
That's incredible. Well, did you go through Narracourt?
Did we go through Narracourt?
I went through Millicent.
You went through Millicent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you could have stopped at Morris's Bakery and had a Kitchener bun in Narracourt.
I remember someone did I think you guys did.
Yeah, we drove to Narracourt on the way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we went and saw Tatum's. Tatum's like auntie or uncle.
Oh, nice! You could have stopped at Billy Mac's, where I used to sell raffle tickets to the Chook raffle.
Well, we went to the spot on the corner across from that Art Deco hotel that's like abandoned.
Oh, the King Craig.
I think so. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
It's just this nice hotel that I'm like, that'd actually be really cool if it was like,
they stayed in
refitted.
There was like a haunted pub they stayed in Millicent.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was wild in Millicent. That like one at night, like no kidding, like doors were slamming.
Oh golly.
and like I went into a room, I left a room, and then I tried to go into the room and it was locked.
I actually I locked the door on you.
No, you didn't. There was spooky stuff. Oh, actually,
my kid's trying to call me.
Well, yeah, if you want to close up soon, that's fine.
Yeah, I might have to. Sorry, just because my little one's trying to call.
She's telling you, got to tell you about her ex or something. Her next ex.
Probably.
Oh, well, let me just tell you this one story about the Millicent downstairs. So downstairs, George in the shower. We're the only ones there at this time, and I'm hearing downstairs what sounds like. Oh no, actually, I screwed up the story. We were in bed. Everybody was in bed. And I go out of my bed, and it sounds like downstairs there's just a gang of people all having fun, like being rowdy and all that. The pub shut at like 9. It was like 12.
Oh, my goodness.
There's no one there.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Bullagoon, and we have a house called Struan House just nearby. And there's rumours that is haunted as well.
Do you believe in it? Do you believe in haunted things and the paranormal?
I don't know. Like, seeing is believing. So I think, yeah, like if I saw something that I would really have to question, like, hang on, what's happening here? Yeah, but I haven't pondered it too much. No? Too into my stoicism.
Yeah, haven't looked into multi-dimensional theories of reality and all that.
That's all right.
Fair enough. All right, well, I'll let you go because you got kids and all that. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time, attention, welcome. Your efforts and work, to this state to make it a better place.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to share before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity. And like I said, I love sitting down. I love talking, but I love listening to people's stories as well. So just to be able to give me an opportunity to tell mine is pretty amazing. So, yeah, I will just end it by saying in Ghana, Natalia, my respect.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I think you keep this tradition going well in the Labor Party, and that's the great Tony Abbott once said, it was after the passing of Bob Hawke, he said that Bob Hawke was great because he had a Labor heart and a Liberal head. And I think that's something that you embody in the duopoly of our politics, is that you've got to have an understanding of both sides and then bring that pragmatism to making everyone's lives better.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me. It was great fun.
We out.
We're out.